Serious, people with religious extremist parents. What was it like growing up? Had an exorcism in the living room once. Also didn't get all my vaccines and now I don't know what I'm at risk for since those tests to see what vaccines you've had are so expensive. Oh, making friends was awkward in grade school because I couldn't watch the shows, listen to the music they did. Some of my earliest memories are driving with my whole family in the Suburban and my dad telling us all that the great Christian persecution was going to begin soon and we all needed to be prepared for them to take us away from him and my mom, and how terrible it would be. He got very into Y2K prepping as well, and I remember calling my friends and telling them to believe in Jesus because the world was going to end and we needed to all be ready. I also remember being confused as to why I didn't have any good friends. Middle school was pretty rough for me. I fully blame my childhood church for my anxiety. Whole lot of messages like that directed at a mostly adult audience. But it rubbed off a little too well on me and now I still get jumpy when I hear a vaguely trumpet sounding car horn. I moved 1,000 km to get away from them. It was terrible. I remember getting into an argument when I was 15 with my parents about how crappy my life was. I had no time for friends because I'd wake up, go to school, come home, do dishes, then homework, then chop wood for 2 hours, clean the floors, maintain the fire in the wood stove, etc. It was like -30°C and I'd have to basically take care of my parents, make them coffees and teas, make them food, keep the fire warm for them. It was the only means of heating that we had. Neither one worked. They just sat for 16 hours a day on their computers, smoking 5 packs a day between them, staining the entire inside of the house yellowish brown. I used to get bullied in school for smelling like smoke. Anyways, they were bragging about their conservative parenting skills being superior, etc. I just said something to my dad along the lines of, "Get off your high horse." One of the few times I ever talked back. He just shoved me as hard as he could and stormed out yelling and swearing. Used to get beat and yelled at all the time, so that was nothing. TBH, it was awful. I burned my hands and arms occasionally in the wood stove, stoking the fire, and my mom used to say things like, "If you think that's painful, just imagine the torture that's ahead of you if you don't respect your parents." She literally said this to me, too. "God will make it so that I'll forget that you ever existed when you go to heck and I go to heaven. Because God takes care of mothers." People of Reddit, I crap you not, this happened. Considering their behavior, God would not even doubt a second to send them on a bullet train to heck. I'd hear my mom constantly complaining that how I am not religious and a shame to the family. Occasionally there is even a comment about how me not being religious is the reason to my parents' health being bad. When I was young, my mom was cautious with who I was friends with. People practicing auto religion were a strict no-no. I have a friend since college and my mom constantly worries that I am going to convert. When I stopped going to church, my mom would break out into tears while pleading with me to go back. Manipulative crap. I was always under my parents' watch. They were helicopter parents so that I couldn't do anything against our religion. I was always the weird kid because my clothing had to be appropriate, and anyone that wasn't our religion I had to try to convince them to come to our church, or what was the point of being friends with them? Women weren't equal and we were told that everything we were doing was practicing to be a good wife and mother someday, and that it was our true calling and nothing else mattered. If we planned to go to college, that was great because it could help us teach our children. Sundays were for church only or church related activities. No TV, no playing outside, etc. We were just normal enough that we thought we were normal until we grew up and realized that we didn't have any self-esteem or value in ourselves without the church giving us our worth and value. I'm still trying to detox and to find ways to raise my kids because I know I don't want to raise them like I was, but I also don't know the right way to raise them any other way, and I fall into the pattern of being like my parents. I lack sentiment in any form and I'm almost entirely incapable of love. If somebody hurts me, I automatically sever our relationship in my head and it's like I never knew them. I grew up incredibly vulnerable to conspiracy theories because facts didn't matter. I grew up with no sense of empathy because the church told me what and how to feel about all things. I grew up with no self-confidence because I was expected to be perfect and could not be. I grew up with extreme self-loathing because if I wasn't happy, it's because I wasn't close enough to God. Depression was my own fault because I wasn't close enough to God. Illness was my own fault because I wasn't close enough to God. If I have financial pain, it's because I'm not close enough to God. Now that I'm almost 30, I've left that cesspool of lies and am learning how to be a human who feels empathy, sees facts, and is capable of love. It's freaking hard. This will probably be buried, but my mother was raised a Christian Scientist. It's the religion that doesn't use any medical intervention and followers are just supposed to pray when they're sick. My mom had polio as a child and received no medical intervention, not wanting her children to receive the same treatment. She always took us to the doctor and we had all our vaccinations, but we were never supposed to mention this to a member of the church. I think this made me believe all religion was hypocritical bulls. Anyway, she left the church when I was probably 11 years old because she developed some serious health issues and needed medical attention. She was essentially shunned from the Christian Science church and spent a decade looking for a new church. She remained very religious until her death, but didn't understand why her children were never involved with religion. I would just like to say, it's farcical that one of the most unscientific branches of Christianity calls themselves Christian Scientists. As much fun as having someone tell you the world not only was going to end very soon, but that its destruction would be a good thing, could be, I guess. Fun fact, people in politics believe this and make policy expecting this belief to hold true. Wasn't allowed to watch Star Wars or E.T. because demons were going to manifest during Armageddon and will look like the characters from films and children wouldn't be scared of them. I grew up believing Jesus was going to come back any moment and take the church and we had to be right with God or we wouldn't be taken. I spent a lot of my childhood muttering apologies to Jesus for my thoughts and actions just in case. I had the rare combo of religious extremist academics. 1. Being told to read the Bible and then write an essay on the passage I just read. 2. Church every Sunday morning and Wednesday nights. 3. Constant chores. 4. Older siblings that bullied the heck out of me because I'm smaller and weaker and the Bible teaches a lot of violence. 5. Getting your mouth washed out with soap if you try to retaliate against your siblings. 6. Being repeatedly belted for things you didn't do, because your siblings thought it was funny to tell on you so that you'd be belted. 7. Not allowed to watch cartoons or the Disney Channel because they are demonic. 8. Watching science documentaries instead, realizing everything I was taught is bulls and becoming an atheist, now entering the years of 14 plus. 9. Never complain. If you complain about anything, then it's your fault. 10. Never get caught. Strict parents don't create good kids, they create kids that don't tell them things and know how to sneak. 11. Don't invite your friends over, because your parents will spend an hour preaching to them. 12. Not having a close relationship with your parents because you don't feel comfortable talking to them. 13. Having undiagnosed ADHD until halfway through college because your parents thought it didn't exist. He's a boy, they aren't made to just sit and learn. Worst part about this, my mom has a PhD specialized in child counseling. With me being the way I am, she should have never gotten her license. There's more, I just feel like I've written enough. Basically, it's freaking terrible, and I'm jealous of anyone that actually gets along well with their parents. What amazes me is she managed to get a PhD AMD keep her beliefs intact. Well, I was never allowed inside the house of my childhood best friend because he had two moms and my parents didn't want that normalized. You definitely don't want a kid thinking it's normal to have two loving, accepting parents. I couldn't go to dances or any sort of secular party, went to church 3 times a week, and anytime the doors were open. I could only have friends that were in our church, and then half of them weren't approved of. I couldn't date until I was 16 and then only girls in the church, 2 of which weren't approved of. I couldn't listen to rock music, which in adulthood made me an expert on rock music. I love the little happy touch at the end. It's so juxtaposed against the entire post. For me, it was only my mom who was religious. JW. She converted a few years after my parents had me, so my dad had no idea how bad it was going to be. No holidays or friends for me growing up. I remember freshman year of high school. I wanted to hang out with some kids after school. My mom was not having it and drove around town to find me. It was humiliating and she openly disapproved them because of how they dressed. She didn't want me hanging out with the wrong crowd because it would stray me further from God. After that, I just stopped bothering trying to make friends last outside of school. My childhood memories were mainly hearing my parents arguing, threatening divorce because my dad was unhappy and hated that our family couldn't do most things, like birthdays, Christmas, Halloween, etc. I'm pretty sure their sex life was depressing too because sex was only to procreate and it had to be missionary. She openly hates homosexuals and is very judgmental. She has exploded on me and given me silent treatments due to my choice of hair color and fashion. My dad also lost a lot of his friends just like me. I'm 26 now and they're still together. But I know they're still struggling like they did when I was 5. I'm sorry you went through that. I was looking for fellow XJWs in this thread. I just left in June. I was mostly raised in it. Didn't think badly of it till 2 years ago, but I tried to justify it. After being out, I can't believe how fricked up that religion is, and that I was a part of it. I hope you're doing better now. Not my parents so much as my grandparents, but my parents carried on the traditions for most of my life. No shows or movies with talking animals. Encourages friendship with demons. Women wear ankle-length skirts, dresses. Don't cut their hair. Keep their hair in a tight modest bun for church or any time they wear it up. Purity promises and rings at the start of puberty. Women do not work outside the home unless absolutely necessary. When my brother got outed as gay, my grandmother nearly tried to exorcise the devil out of him. Church was cult-like. Youth group was a brainwashing session. I've been made to read the Bible multiple times over as my homework instead of real schooling. I am an atheist now, undoubtedly because of how religion was forced down my throat past my tears growing up. I've had to learn not to hate every religion or religious person I come across. My years at church broke my sense of self-worth and my moral compass until very recently. I remember my father didn't talk to me and I only ate breakfast for 2 months after coming out of closet and saying I am bisexual. It is illegal to underfeed your child. Let the beatings commence. Spanked, paddled, whipped, and beaten for minor offenses. That's why I joined the military, was to get away from that nonsense. When I was 15, I started working at a camp that was 2.5 hours away from home. They provided shelter, food, and utilities for the entire summer. The beds weren't comfortable, the food was meh, the shelter was more like a poorly thrown together shack, and they only paid $110 a week. But still, that was far better than being near my family for the whole summer. I don't know how extremist or fanatical my parents were, but we were the church every Sunday wearing your Sunday best in the front pew kind of family. There were also the extra trips to church for Ash Wednesday, Maundy Thursday, twice and Good Friday, as well as Saturday and of course Easter and Christmas. They definitely had some sense of superiority, like every other person of any other religion or denomination were poor fools that won't get to heaven. They also believed in keeping the races separate and that gays shouldn't marry. My dad completely flipped his crap and stopped at nothing to try to keep my wedding to my Jewish wife from happening, to the point that we hired security for the wedding. They believed that mixed marriages never work. My and I are 13 years strong so far. My dad also swore that he would make sure any child of ours would know that it's not okay to be Jewish. I'm sure there's more, but it's not coming to mind right now. Needless to say, I cut off all contact with my family because of this. Terrifying in retrospect, but I didn't realize it at the time. You just start to think that all the bulls that's going on around you is normal, and then when you start meeting people in the real world outside of the religious bubble, you slowly start realizing how fricked up everything was. Grew up in a non-denominational Christian church. The resemblance it had to a cult didn't really dawn on me till I was older. Probably 14-16. My parents were the stereotypical helicopter parents, watched our every move, put screen mirroring apps on the very first cell phone we were ever given at age 16, shaming the heck out of us for what they would find on our phones, talking to our secret girlfriends, etc. Our church was full of families with 7+ children, the largest family having 12 kids and single mom. The dad was in jail for molesting some of the eldest girls, out of a population of about 500-600. Me and my sister were the only kids enrolled in public school, because mom was a school teacher. As a teenager, life was absolutely miserable. Around the age of 14 I decided I hated Christianity and the absolute perversion and abuse of power this church was capable of inflicting upon me. One suicide attempt and psych ward trip later, around the age of 16, I decided I was done with the church punishing me. I decided if I couldn't escape my parents' house physically, then I would escape it mentally. This led me to start using drugs of any sort. I started drinking cough medicine and smoking weed. Fast forward a few months, I started chemistry and synthesized multiple plant-derived psychedelics in my room. This led me to overdose and panic and have a second psych ward trip. After the church hears of this, they expelled me from the congregation. They also expelled multiple people for being gay and all sorts of other lovely things. Long term, I'm now almost 21 and I'm not gonna lie, I have a substance problem. I think there's some very deep emotional scarring I'll never be able to completely deal with. I'm trying to stop my substance abuse issue and turn my life around for the better. But after being so bright in high school I feel like a retard now from all of the oxys. My goal now is to go to trade school and get certified in welding. Hopefully make a pretty okay life for myself. I wanted to go to college, but I have a few drug charges on my record, so I've pretty much abandoned hope of an easy future. I know I fricked up my life a lot. I'll be honest, it's hard. I think about suicide often, but I want to give life one last clean try before I abandon all hope. If it doesn't work out and I wind up homeless, I do plan to kill myself. I'd rather be dead than homeless. Sending you the best vibes. I'm so sorry. Please take care of yourself. Listen to my parents tell my sister that they rather her be addicted to H than be gay after they caught her with her girlfriend. Whoa, absolutely lovely, that. Grew up hardcore Mormon. I'd like to stress that my childhood isn't as common for other Mormon kids. Most of the time Mormons are fairly understanding and loving to their kids. But the Mormon culture does promote the mentality my parents had. When I was growing up I wasn't punished like some others here. I was spanked and experienced the belt, but that isn't why I have some psychological problems now. The real punishment was shame. From the earliest age I can remember, around 6, I was told that I was lazy and I was pee my life away. This was the strongest language my father would use. When I first heard the word sex, around 11, I looked it up on the family computer. I was a pervert from then on, and had to talk to the bishop every month for a checkup. Heck, in every school I went to my parents told school counselors that I wasn't allowed on computers because I might look up pictures of naked women. I never did this. This is just the SparkNotes version, but I internalized the shame. Being so young I just accepted that I was what my father called me and hated myself for it. I was a lazy failure at 6. I was a pervert at 11. It didn't stop me from doing any of the things I was doing before. I just learned to fear my father's footsteps as if it was the devil himself walking down the hallway. I lived my life in the brief intervals between punishments. I am still not beyond this at 24 years old. Oh, where to start? Spankings that were borderline beatings for every offense. I wasn't allowed to talk back at all. Asking why I was talking back. I spent my entire childhood believing that all my problems were because I didn't love God enough. When I was 9, I was convinced that if I didn't shape up, God was going to kill me. So I spent 6 months being a perfect angel but also living in constant terror. Just completely convinced that if I did one thing wrong, lightning would blow me off the planet. Last thing I'll mention is how my parents wouldn't feed me as a child if I talked back. Many nights I was sent home with no food for the most minor of infractions. Finishing a chore a minute or too late. They have largely turned things around, and even apologized for some of these actions. But I still have no interest in talking to them. My parents used to flick my lip when I'd ask why. I literally just was a curious 7-year-old. Like geez. Sex, alcohol, smoke and everything funny is a sin. So, basically this was my childhood. Now I'm a teen and guess what? Nothing changed. Other than the constant reminders of the devil's influence on every single thing we thought and did, and being told we would go to heck for eternal damnation if we didn't follow this singular path. It was fairly average. I have a friend before we had helped relocate. His mother is very religious and saw us like demons for him. She thought we were pushing him into vice. She wanted to protect him from us. During the move she had hidden small figurines of Jesus in the boxes. 1. Very religious parents. We have to abstain from eating onions, meat and garlic for 9 days twice a year. 2. My parents always think that their religion is the best. They sometimes criticize other religions. 3. They think homosexuality is a sin. 4. My mother wants me to stop eating non-vegetarian food after I get married. 5. I'm only allowed to eat non-veg on Sunday, Friday and Saturday. 6. My mother frowns when I tell her that I don't believe in God. I had a fair-sized collection of early edition Yu-Gi-Oh cards as a kid. After coming home for a visit, I find them to be missing. Turns out they were burned because they could be used to summon demons. Could be used to summon demons. Well, yes, but actually no. I have a friend with super Christian, adopted parents. She is a lesbian-leaning B-girl and her parents are super condemning about it. She's Christian too, but it goes to the point that her parents don't let her watch horror movies or let boys into her room when she has made it clear she basically only likes girls. She is currently to the point that she ranted about her whole situation to me and it sounded like she's going down a suicidal path. She also has her phone controlled by her parents. It's set up so that they are notified with every app download. She has a screen time limit that shuts off her phone automatically. She has apps required for school like Google Docs and Google Classroom on a time limit. They also read all her text messages. All of this, as far as I am aware, is to prevent her from sinning on her phone. I still feel a lot of shame about my body and about having sex. And I'm almost 27 years old and married. I still feel like I can't really tell my parents anything about my life that's at all personal because I feel like they'll either judge me and guilt me about sin in my life or they'll give me their standard advice. Just pray about it. I don't think they'll ever really know anything about me. I sympathize with this. Just pray about it is all I get out of my parents too, and it's very frustrating to want to have a relationship but also being unable to talk to them about anything because they don't listen or have helpful input. I wouldn't say I'm going to be as extreme a case as others, but I feel, looking back, it could be pretty rough. My dad was deeply religious and was devoted to his faith. Every morning he was up to watch Pastor Arnold Murray, read the Bible all the time, had a Strong's Concordance. All pretty normal things. We weren't actually churchgoers. Something about the temple of man being corrupt. As I started to form my own opinions, the vehement faith started to become more aggressive. Justification of hatred towards gays from the Bible. I was interested in a mixed race girl in high school and was told I needed to be equally yoked, which was apparently a roundabout way of saying stick to my race. I think the most frustrating thing was that every worldly topic was tied to Christianity. Wanna talk about politics? Well, you know Obama is a horn of the umpteenth seal and will bring in this new era of chaos. Talk about gas prices? Well, the Lord will provide and will get us through this gas price increase. It became impossible to have a conversation. Needless to say, I'm an atheist now. I truly envy anyone who can have a faith. I wonder what that warm feeling is they get. Or what it's like to feel so strongly about something intangible. It'd be nice to feel as if something was always on my side. My mom was and always has been very passive. She knows. My father has since passed away. My wife's parents are like this too. Only the Catholic version. So, it's still an ongoing frustration. The conversation thing is so frustrating. It's hard to have a relationship with someone who has no meaningful input and makes no effort to participate in the relationship. Turning everything to religion isn't helpful at all. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.